Hey everyone, and welcome back to a new video. Flesh Eater Courts fans have had to be exceptionally patient for this cycle of Age of Sigmar. Since 3rd edition was released over 2 years ago, we've seen a steady stream of battle tomes and new releases, but the Flesh Eater Courts have ended up at the back of the pack, still sitting on their 2nd edition battle tome even as 4th edition begins to loom over the horizon. Well, that all changes because we've seen a swathe of new models for the faction and the announcement of their 3rd edition battle tome, and in this video I want to take a closer look at those previews and share my thoughts on a few of them. If that sounds like something worth feasting on, then let's jump right in. Now, to put it bluntly, the reveals we saw from the Warhammer World Championships were beyond my expectations. I was expecting a few models here and there and the various codex and battle tome reveals. However, it seems the Warhammer team has really managed to ramp up its model production because whether in Warhammer 40k, Age of Sigmar or some of the side games, we're getting some significant releases, multiple units per faction, which shows just how far we've come from even a few editions ago. But anyways, the highlight of the show for many was the reveal of Ushoran, the Mortarch of Delusion, who amongst other various titles also goes by the name of Sumeros Summer King, which has been cropping up quite a bit in the ongoing Dawnbringers series. He actually has a history going back to Warhammer Fantasy and the Vampire Bloodlines, but he's never actually appeared as a model in either that game or Age of Sigmar. However, that's finally changed and his new model is absolutely fantastic, and there's a number of cool elements that jump out straight away. Firstly, he's a chonker of a model. We can see in some of the model photography that he rivals many of the other big centerpiece models of other factions, and I'm sure once we see his rules, we'll find that he hits as hard as many of them too. There's also an incredible amount of detail on this model, the delicate sinews of his flesh, the rusted jewellery and pageantry, and this enormous fur cloak that really highlights that bestial tone that the model evokes. It's a real treat for the eyes, and even after looking over it for some time now, I'm still finding little details that either I missed or that get me thinking about the implied narrative behind the model, and that's what peak Warhammer modelling is all about in my eyes. I also like the lumbering, crouched over posture this model has because it gives Ushoran an immense amount of weight. If he was able to stand up straight, I'm sure he'd be as tall as a gargant, but by being bent low like he is, it not only emphasises how decrepit him and his kind are, but also hints at a toughness and resilience that I'm sure we'll see reflected in his datasheet. Again, there are tons of little details that really add to this model, but in particular, I really love the skulls and faces weaved into Ushoran's cloak. Are these visitors of the Summer King's court who have fallen foul of his hospitality, or do they have some other story to them? I'm sure we'll find out in the battle tome, but there's one face in particular that you can't help but notice. Oddly, this seems to be the only face that looks kind of alive, if you know what I mean, and it makes me wonder if this is the visage of the Summer King those who have fallen under the Flesh Eater Court's illusions see. After all, it seems to be mimicking Ushoran's true face, but again, that's just another cool way the model gets you thinking and creating stories of your own. Moving on, we also saw a swathe of other Flesh Eater models, including Cryptguard, the lowborn serfs of the court, and the Morbeg Knights, gruesome cavaliers whose monstrous mounts appear as noble Pegasi or Draconith to those under the spell of the court. We also got an update to the Varghulf Courtiers, which look awesome, and 2 new hero units, the Abhorrent Cardinal and the Royal Decapitator. Looking across all of these, what I really love about them and the Flesh Eater Courts in general is how well the design team have been able to create this mocking sense of courtly life. Whether it's the grotesque interpretations of regimental musicians and sergeants, or the concept of law and order and even martial punishment in a faction that is itself straddling the definitions of both, these models are not only great to look at, but also get you thinking about the concepts and ideas behind them, and it's what makes these factions and Warhammer more broadly such a cool hobby. But most of all, these new models bring a big and much needed update to one of the more dated and static ranges in Age of Sigmar, and you only need to look at some of those older existing models to see how much a breath of fresh air these new reveals will bring, and I'm sure Skaven players will be looking more closely than most. As has become a bit of a custom these days, a few of these models will be released as part of a new army box, which will include a limited edition print of the battle tome. I'm not always a fan of these sets because the normal battle tome is often released a few weeks later, meaning there's a bit of a pay for early access vibe to these boxes. However, at the end of the day, it's only a few weeks, and that's often enough time to get other models ready in the background. The other big release, however, is the fourth and supposedly final book of the Dawnbringers series called The Mad King Rises, which will focus on the factions of death as the Twin-Tail Crusades run into Ushoran and the Soulblight Gravelords. We were told before the series started that one half of the Twin-Tail Crusade would fail and another would succeed. Given that Geraint is going into the Summer King's realm, I don't like their chances very much, and we could see that prophecy play out in this fourth book. However, at the same time, I still expect there's a fifth book, and keeping my tinfoil hat on for a moment, I think the reason that's not been revealed is for the same reason the fifth book of the Arcs of Omen series wasn't announced at first, because it marks the return of a major character, and in Age of Sigmar's case, I think that could be Malarian. But that said, all bets are off until we get it confirmed that there's a book 5, and in the meantime, I can't wait to see what Ushoran gets up to in his book. But looking over all of the new Flesh Eater Courts reveals, including the few that were previewed before the Warhammer World Championships, I think this has been worth the wait for fans. Ushoran is another great centrepiece model, and the community has really taken to him with kit bashing ideas and just general excitement for such a cool model. As they mentioned on the reveal stream, he's also a character with a long history in Warhammer Fantasy and AOS, and I'm sure he's going to play a big role in future editions of the latter. And of course, the other new models really helped fill up the Flesh Eater range, offering plenty of units for new and existing players to get stuck into, all with a ton of dynamic posing, characterful personality and kit bashing opportunities. It's a great way to round off the year, and I think we'll be feasting on these for quite some time to come. So that's a quick look at the recent Flesh Eater Courts reveals. It certainly invited me into the faction, and I'll be keeping an eye on the Warhammer community site and my wallet ahead of any release date announcements. But what did you think about the reveals? Do you, like me, really like Ushoran's model, and has it made you think about expanding or starting a new Flesh Eater Courts army? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. And as always, thank you for joining me today. If you liked the video, please do click the like button and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to join me for future Warhammer videos, and I hope to see you for my next one. Until then, however, take care.